The following is intended only for mature audiences. Always consult legal and medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised.
From a an energetic standpoint, anything physical in the body that sets up as an illness stems from an energetic perspective to begin with. So how are these things impacting our chakras? How is it internalizing?
I guess we'll call it the awakening time where they're more aware. Oh my gosh, I can tell my dog, my cat's acting funny, or I'm feeling like I'm being watched. Mm-hmm. And they're more aware than they are most of the time. I mean, it's like...
Right? A lot of them for me. I had a little girl come to me. I was at church. And that was the first really...
And all of a sudden, within a couple of days' time, somebody's either lost their job or somebody's car broke down. You know, these are the accidental sides of manifesting.
Stories happen to people, and they take it on themselves. They take it on their shoulders. They take it on their heart. And, a lot of this stuff challenges them and their beliefs about themselves, about it limits who they can be.
I like to look at their charts before I do a healing session with them. And if we can get their chart, we can really pinpoint, a lot of these are past life things coming forward.
What it is we have a conversation with that spirit and we let them know why we're there. We also...
but as far as the negative aspects, it can really lower your mood and, it can completely depress you. And I've seen that with a lot of people.
Because it was a shock for me, I expanded my knowledge and I stepped into energy healing, and then I went into shamanism. So in working with my guides...
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Terra Turas. This evening we have Reverend Pat Beers, myself, Mr. Jared Walters, and Mr. Malcolm Spears. How's everybody doing this evening?
Great. Fantastic.
I'm doing good.
I'm glad to hear that. We're changing things slightly as we go along here for Terra Turas. This evening we're going to be talking about... I listed the clairs, the predominant three, and being able to say clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant. There was another one, claircognizant. And yet, even as we were sitting and talking about this before the show, Malcolm had a list of ways that he says, these are other things that are going on, or how people are interacting. And I'm like, ooh, because I think that we all use them. Well, Malcolm, oddly, if you would, tell me what some of those things on your list were.
Okay. The first one on my list was voice vibration, because whenever you're listening to someone talk, they're putting their vibration out through their speech, and you can pick up a lot. And I work a lot by phone, so this comes in extremely handy. Psychometry. It's an object that's been owned by someone for a long time, usually a piece of jewelry, because gold, silver, crystals, any kind of diamonds or precious stones hold energy much better. And you can do quite a reading on that. Even if it's somebody's great-grandmother's ring, you can still pick up on it. Numerology, I do that a lot as well. It just gives me a template to show me where the various energies are. And then I go from there. Billets I don't do often, but it's like a show thing. You sign your name on a piece of paper. You can sometimes people will ask you to write 3 questions, and you fold up the paper so nothing can be read, and then you pick the billets at random and do a reading through the vibration that the people left by signing their name. Tea leaves, which is fun, but I find takes too long. But there's a whole ritual surrounding it. Basically, you pour the tea, you drink the whole cup, and then you inverse the cup, and the whole thing is you're putting your energy into the water.
It's funny.
You can come up with really interesting stuff out of tea leaves.
It's interesting because, Pat, you and I had gone over to Chesterfield on their opening day, and we were there with Donna Bretz, and they had their opening ceremony, which included a lot of the readers that are at Chesterfield, they have tea leaf readings. So we sat down and we were able to have the cup of tea and everything. And I'm not a tea drinker. And I'm like, okay, this will be interesting. So I drank down to about as far as I could get. And I'm like, okay, is this good? And the lady took the cup. She goes, no, you have to drink all of it. Really? Fine. So I drank more of it. And it took me like 2 or 3 different times. Finally, she said, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, but it's funny because you say tea leaf, because I remember that. It's like, oh my God, I had a hard time doing that. Pat, did you drink tea? Did you have a hard time when we were at Chesterfield?
No. And it's interesting because I just had a tea leaf reading done before Halloween. And it was, and the young man who did it doesn't know me. I mean, he knows me, but he doesn't know, he knows I read and all that kind of stuff. But it was so interesting because I don't know. I'm going to try to hold this up here. Can you see that?
Oh,
and it's a witch riding a crescent moon. You can see.
Oh, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Broom. See the crescent moon, and then if you look at this, you can see a figure on there, and it was hysterical. I burst out laughing. You can see the hat to the right of the little stick sticking out, and it was just hysterical. And he just cracked up, and he went, "Well, I think this is going to be kind of interesting." And the stuff he told me was right on, and I was shocked. I hadn't had one done since we were in Chesterfield. And this, this one, yeah, it was interesting.
It was
not favorite thing, but I'll do it. Yeah.
It was the first time I'd ever had a tea leaf reading done, so I found the entire process interesting. And like you said, it was accurate. I don't have any doubt. Gigi used to have people at the shop doing tea leaf readings, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a couple different readers that offer tea leaf readings. It's actually, in Sandusky, there used to be a lady that had a tea room, and that's what she did a lot of times. So people were very interested in that because it was a popular thing for people to get their friends together to go see the lady that does the tea leaf readings.
You might hear a moment of audio, and I'll try to keep it as quick as possible. Okay. I made a joke, everybody, before we even started. I said, here's Mercury retrograde, and Jerry goes, no, cancel. And I'm like, so I ran right smack into it. Did I invite that or what?
Right.
Right.
Malcolm, I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
No problem. I was doing a class on tea leaf reading, and one guy got almost the entire pot of tea leaves in his cup, and the guy sitting next to him had like 3 flakes. And you can still, it doesn't matter what you get. It's just what the pattern suggests to you. And then it's like any of these things that are visual. It's just something that is giving you some kind of visual information, and then you launch yourself from there. So it's a lot of fun. So tarot works about the same way. Have any of you guys ever seen people working with African stones?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, this is something the Caribbean folks know about. And you make a circle, and like I had a black cloth. I had a circle, a necklace of one of those little drilled crystal necklaces you can get cheap. And then you give them a series of objects that you literally find on the street, like a bottle cap, a feather, a twig, and a rock, and so on. And you have them sort of kind of shake them in their hands and then cast them into the circle. And then you read the resulting pattern, and each object has some kind of symbolic connection. And you can really do incredibly in-depth readings with that.
Yeah, I've heard it termed charm casting or bone throwing.
Yeah, I guess bone throwing would be,
kind of in the same realm, yeah.
I was at a psychic fair, a very large psychic fair, and it wasn't going well for me. So that was on the Friday. So I was with Lynn, and we parked the car, and we're walking across the parking lot, and she's explaining to me how this works. And as we're walking from the car to the building, we're picking up objects off the ground. And so I opened with that in the morning, and I had a lineup, and mostly Caribbean people, and they were all going, whoa, that's really how they do it. And the thing is, I've been doing this a long time. You just described to me how it works in 10 minutes. And okay. let's go.
Wow.
It's just a different phase of what you already know.
Yeah. It's just a different way to generate an image.
Now, ironically, if I'm not mistaken, that's using a wide variety of the 4 clairs.
Yeah.
Or 5, or 7, or 10, or I don't know how many there really are.
6.
Are there 6?
There are 6.
Tell me, sir, what are they?
Well, the 3 most common are your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, and your clairsentience. About 15 to 20 years, this is a newer one that kind of came about, is claircognizance or claircognizant. And then there's clairgustance and there's clairolfactance.
Ooh, tell me what the last one was.
Oh, clairolfactance. It's basically clear sense as far as smelling, clear smelling.
Oh.
And then clairgustance is clear taste.
Oh, see, I got both of those, and I never knew that there were names for them, if you will.
I didn't
Yes.
either.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's that thing when you sit down, and I find that those are the kinds of things that happen a lot more when you're reading for somebody in person. It's like being sucked into somebody's kitchen, and you smell grandma cooking or baking or something. You know,
Somebody's perfume, a cigar, pipe, something like flowers. Yep.
And those are the kinds of things that I want to talk to people about this evening. You know, as we're sitting and conversing, Pat was the one that really taught me more about psychometry. And psychometry, you use, again, a mixture of the clairs.
Mm-hmm.
Pat, for a minute, talk to me about psychometry. Or talk to us.
Psychometry, I get it when I walk into buildings. When I went to see the Egypt display at Cleveland at the Metropolitan Museum up there one time, it was absolutely fascinating to me, all the vibrations. Because think about how many years that stuff has been around. And I would just walk over to one of the big stones, or the things that I could touch, and I could touch them, and I could just really be there when what was going on. I probably talked about this before, but I had 5 sisters. I went to their home to do readings, and there was a 3-4 year span between each one of them. And their father came to me in a different. One of them, he came to me with cigar smoke. One of them, he came to me with his aftershave. One of them, I saw him. I described him as she had remembered him when she was the oldest of the children. She remembered him in his army uniform. It was absolutely fascinating. I had no clue that this was the same man coming to me in 5 different ways. He presented himself differently for each child, because each child could identify with what I was saying about him and the way I said it. And I have ladies come to me all the time that'll give me their diamond ring, but it was either her great-grandmother's or his great-grandmother's. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I need something else. And they'll go, well, why? I wear that all the time. And I go, because this diamond has got a big imprint of someone who's a lot older than you are.
Yeah, mixed signals.
Even you.
Yeah.
Jared, Michelle Seckley, in the chat room, mentioned that you taught a class on a lot of these at your shop at one point.
I do. I teach a class on psychic development, but I teach it a little differently than most people, because I teach it from the aspect of psychic games. So I try to make it fun and interactive for people, and it helps to identify which clair is their strongest, or which other ones that they can work on developing from there. So it's, there's a series of different games, which I think we're going to do a show on that after the first of the year, to kind of give you some ideas on what type of fun things you can do with friends or by yourself to heighten, awaken, or charge yourself up so that these clairs start to come through for you.
Malcolm, you did the same kind of thing, didn't you? For a different point in time, you had development classes?
Yeah, through a church and also through my home. And it's, I would, each class I would be featuring something different. So I went in depth on a lot of these things. And it's, not everybody is good at everything. So some people get absolutely 0 and they get frustrated because they're not clairsentient. So they're not picking up the vibe off of, whatever the jewelry is or the object is.
Right.
And not everybody's like super visual. So, I mean, it gives a good balance by changing it up every class.
Mm-hmm.
And it exposes people to a lot of different things.
And that's kind of an
also,
important
what's
part.
fun is if you're ever sitting at somebody's house and they bring out a photo album, I love that.
Yeah.
Because I'll just jump on a picture and go, who's that guy? And, you know, I have this whole reading for them on this particular guy that's almost like, he seems to be almost jumping out of the picture.
Yeah. A lot of readers will read that way, is by looking at a picture to connect with the soul or the spirit on the other side so that they can get the messages that, you know, it's a type of psychometry.
Yeah.
I'm
it's their image rather. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you. Go ahead, Pat.
I was going to say, I want to tell you a funny story. I've been going to the same doctor since he started his practice. Oh my gosh, 25 years ago. And I went in to see him last year, and I got this overwhelming smell of aftershave lotion, and it would not go away. And I'm talking to him, and, you know, of course, being a doctor and being analytical, you know, when I go in to see him, I think he makes the sign of the cross before he comes in the room. You know what I mean? Because every once in a while, I'll tell him something, he'll go, "You're crazy." And then I see him the next time, 6 months later, and he goes, "Oh, by the way," and he was his deceased father. It was the anniversary of his father's death. And they had gotten a car with air conditioning, and he said he would get dressed, put his aftershave on, and by the time they left the house, he couldn't smell it anymore, so he'd take a new bath in it. And he said he would start that air conditioning, and they were not allowed to open a window, and they're all dying. And I had him laughing about it by the time I left him. But it's just so funny how it will just hit us sometimes. I wasn't trying to do that. I wasn't touching anything of his. He's typing on his computer and looking at me. But it was just hilarious to watch him when he figured it out. And then he started to smell it. And we were almost finished with the visit. And I had finished what I was telling him. And he looked at me, and he was getting ready to leave the room. And he said, "Pat," and I said, "What?" He said, "I smell my father's aftershave. Thanks a lot. That's going to be with me all day now." And I was there like 9 in the morning. But I just thought that was kind of comical how it just comes up sometimes.
Yeah.
I shared the same GP as my mom. And he actually mentioned to me one time, like after my mom had passed, that he changed how he takes people's blood pressure because of her. Because what he used to do is he used to have people put their hand on his shoulder while he was, had the cuff going, and he had the stethoscope on the inside of the elbow. And he said that since after her, he starts having people put it on the edge of the, like you're on the table, there's the part that flips up, put your hand there instead. And he said he changed that because he was taking my mother's blood pressure, and she was picking up all kinds of stuff for him. And I'm guessing it spooked him a little bit. My mom was an amazing psychometrist. She was good. Oh, my God. We tried to con her, and she would catch us every time. But anyway, he actually explained to me that he changed how he takes blood pressure because of her. And I think it must have spooked him. That's the only reason I can think why he would change it.
Sure.
Jared, I'm going to go back and ask real quick, because since you were able to tell the 6 Clairs.
Yes.
Can you go through and say each one and give me a brief synopsis of what it is?
This is one of my favorite topics, because when most people are coming to you and they're asking, you know, can you tell me, you know, what is my psychic sense, or, you know, how can I connect? How can I become better? Well, we have to start to identify these key factors. And then once you know what you're strongest at, that's what you work on and, you know, build. And you can also work on ones that you're not as good, aren't as good for you, to help with your abilities and your psychic strengths and mediumship and things like that. So if we talk about clairvoyance basically means clear seeing. Clairvoyance can be subjective, which most people subjectively see in their mind's eye. Like if I, for instance, say, I need you to visualize an apple, most people have that ability. They can start to visualize and think, this is what the apple looks like. You know, everybody's apple will look different when you ask them to describe it, but they understand what an apple looks like because they have based that from, you know, physical life. They've seen an apple. Mm-hmm. So that's a subjective sense when you're seeing the image in your mind's eye, like almost like you're viewing a video. Like I said, most people see it this way. You can also see objectively with clairvoyance. Objectively would be, for instance, in mediumship, seeing the spirit standing exactly in front of me like I see you on the screen right now. So there is a difference. Very few people see objectively, and most people see spirit out of their peripheral vision. But there are people that do have that ability that occasionally will catch spirit in manifested form in front of them. So if we talk about let's talk about the chakra real quick. The chakra directly linked to that would be your third eye chakra. So if you're clairvoyance and you're working on your clairvoyance, think about your chakra, the third eye. If we talk about clairaudience, clairaudience is clear hearing. Again, that can be subjective, where I'm hearing a thought that pops in my head, or it can be objective. You can actually hear spirit say and speak to you directly in your ear, like you hear me now. That is directly related to the throat chakra. So if you're wanting to develop and then work on that, you're going to have to look at the throat chakra, and it's blue. Then we have clairsentience. Clairsentience is clear feeling. Clairsentience is when you walk into a room that someone just had an argument in, and you're like, ooh, I don't like the way it feels in here. That's your clairsentience. And when we were talking about psychometry, the solar plexus chakra is directly related to clairsentience. And also people who are empathic, this is their heightened ability, which would be clairsentience, that clear feeling, because you're feeling and picking up on other people's emotions that might be around you. Again, solar plexus is yellow, so you can work with objects to develop that. If you're doing psychometry and trying to work on that, take the object that you're holding, if it's a ring, and take it right to the solar plexus to help pick up on those vibrations. As you get better with things, everything's a discipline to get stronger and better at. So as you get better with it, it will come more intrinsically to you if it doesn't already, because some people are just natural. We're all natural intuitives. So, things come into us all the time, but we can work and develop these abilities. So we have claircognizance, which is a newer one, like I said, and this one's a little bit more complicated to describe, but it's a clear knowing. It's just knowing something that hasn't come to you through any of the other clairs, if you will. Just, I know this happened, or I know this is going to happen. It's just having this knowingness. And if you watch people, and if you watch readers, especially mediumships as they deliver things, you can usually tell what their best clair is, or their strongest clair, because they usually will say, I see, or I hear, I'm feeling. And that's usually how you can tell where they're working from. You have clairgustance, which is clear taste. So, a lot of times in mediumship, if we're picking up on, I'm getting a taste of blood in my mouth, or I'm getting a taste of something sweet, or whatever it might be, it's just basically you're perceiving a taste. So that would be clairgustance. And clairolfactance is clear smelling. So like we were talking before, you might get a whiff of grandma's perfume, Chanel No. 5, whatever it might be, grab a cigar. So then when you're describing this stuff, I'm smelling. So you kind of, what people are usually connected with the strongest. And as you're developing, these are things you can work with, but it all comes back to the chakras, your energetic system. You have to kind of work through them to build these things and make them stronger. In a nutshell, condensed.
Now, Pat, last week, for the people that don't know, last week we did a live seance, and Pat was leading that seance, and Jared was the ground. What would you call what you did last week, Jared? A gateway or
a ground to help ground Pat, and also to help balance the energy. So in a way, it's also known as a gatekeeper. So okay. I can kind of help discern the energies as they're coming in, and kind of protect in a sense, and kind of feel the energies as they're coming in, so that way we can deliver them to Pat and keep Pat balanced and grounded, so she doesn't fly away from us.
Now it's interesting that you say that, because she, at points in time, will get so immersed in what she's doing that she loses track of everything around her, depending upon how the seance is going. And Pat, I'm going to ask, because I've heard you say it before, if you get too far enmeshed in what's happening, there are times that you have a feeling that you may not want to come back.
Yeah. That's why I always have someone like Jared, someone that I trust, someone that has some clue of what's going on, to be there, because they can sense what's happening with me. And they might say, Pat, or say something to me that kind of pulls me back into the now rather than where I've drifted off to.
Absolutely.
Now, during the seance, you obviously used many of the clairs in conjunction with each other.
Right. A lot of visualization, some hearing, some visual. Remember, we had the character peeking around the corner, and I
Yeah.
knew who that was. The taste, I get the taste a lot of times. I just never know. And the part that's the hardest for people to understand is the knowing. How do you know? And I said, you just know. It's not anything anybody can explain to you that this is exactly how it's going. Poor Kathy is going through that right now. She's very much in the, how do I know this is real? Well, how do you feel about it? Well, it's real. Well, how do you know it's real? I don't know. I don't know how it's real. I just know that it's real. Okay. So how am I going to explain to you what it is if you're telling me that what you're feeling is really real? You just know. And she said, yeah, I guess you're right.
There's a huge thing with just trusting and believing in what you're receiving and acknowledging it to be so. If it sets well with your mental mind as much as it sets well with your soul mind, if that's in balance and in tune and that makes sense to you, then it's true. It's true to you.
Right. And I'm trying to explain to her, set boundaries. I only want to talk to the highest and best of the light. Do not tell me anything I can't do something about, because I think many of us have experienced, especially when 9/11 hit, we're feeling like, oh my gosh, something's going on, but nobody could get a feeling on it. And so then you just start praying for whoever and whatever's involved, please give them what's needed, help them to find the light if that's what it is. Because, and that's why there was a time a few years ago when there was some kind of a tanker thing in China. One of those big doors came down, that they unload from, and all 200 and some people died because this thing went down like the Titanic. And we were all feeling it. And that's when I said, okay, guys, don't tell me anything I can't do something about, because I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever, in any of the clairs, gotten information that was so strong that it may have spooked you? Like, like it was either too strong, too real, too something, or it came out so far out of left field that it jarred you for a moment?
Sometimes when I've had it happen to me, when they think their loved one committed suicide and they were actually killed by a very dear friend or a relative. I don't want to know that. And yet they kind of know it. That's why they bring it up. And then I get the confirmation for it. And so to me, that's a real difficult situation, because then I have to say to them, I can't say you're wrong. I can't say that you're wrong. If you've got that feeling that strongly, and I'm getting feelings that's confirming that, I don't know how you can prove it. But in your heart, you need to know what you need to know. That's why I pray every morning to give people the information they need to make the decisions they need to make, or to bring them peace in some way. And I spend just as much time bringing families peace as I do giving them information. I really do. It's almost a balance.
Jared or Malcolm? Same kind of thing. Have you ever experienced something that jarred you or your senses?
I was many years ago. I was asleep and dreaming, and I was dreaming that there was an earthquake. And I actually thought there was an earthquake, and everything was shaking. So I thought I woke up, but I was still dreaming. I woke up within the dream.
Oh.
And I'm sitting there, I'm lying in bed thinking, well, everything is shaking. Should I get under the doorway? Should I try and get under the bed? But I had a futon, so it wasn't much use in that. And then by this time now I'm properly awake. And then a friend of mine appears to me in front of me, and he says, well, some dreams are prophetic, and he laughs and he disappears. So I'm just sitting there going, what? And anyway, later that day, there was like a major earthquake in Mexico. So it's I got it loud and clear, but I just had no idea what to do with it.
There's a lot of that goes around sometimes. Jared, you got that smile on your face. What are you going to tell me?
I think for myself and for most people, it's the objectiveness of the clairs, when actually, the work that we do, and like I said, I'm a spiritual medium, so, I connect and can have a conversation, usually subjectively, with spirit. But when I walk in a room and spirit's sitting right there, it jolts you because you're not expecting it, because I don't see, objectively all the time. It's usually out of the corner of my eyes and stuff. But there's been a time or two when you walk in and there they are for a glimpse, and you're like, "Whoa, what just happened?" Or you just heard somebody and there's nobody else here. What was that? So I think it's the objective sense of the clairs that kind of gets you. You feel a spirit come up and touch you. Oh, it's like, okay. It makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up and you kind of get the chills, because even though you believe the work that you're doing, when you get it objectively, it's a whole different ballpark.
My kids.
A message from my nephew in Washington, PA, Sunday night, I believe it was. And he said, "Aunt Pat." And I said, "What, honey?" And he said, "You have the curse too, don't you?" And I went, "Honey, what are you talking about?" My paternal grandma was Delaware Indian. He said, "It started when Grandma Varner died. She came to me and she came to Mom and said she was leaving." Now, there are 8 of us kids in the family. I'm second youngest. His mom was the baby. And he said every time someone he loves in the family, they got to be somebody he's real close to, he gets this feeling. Now, we've got 3 of them right now on a banana peel. And he didn't name which one, and I didn't want to know. I didn't question him. But I said, "Honey, he's a natural medium." I said, "It's just something that happens to some of us." And I said, "All you can do is know they're coming to tell you they love you and they're leaving us." And it seemed to calm him down tremendously, because this has been bugging him for, I guess, just like Kathy. I mean, she's the last month. She has just been the veil so thin between the worlds, and she keeps getting these messages and she keeps fighting them, and the more she fights, the closer they come, and he's doing the same thing. So it seemed to help settle him down a little bit, and her too.
I remember it, and Jared, I'm right there with you when you turn around and you run into something or it hits you like that. It takes you back for a minute, and I laugh.
Yeah.
My kids, for a long time, would try to sneak up behind me and spook me and just jar me or do something. And literally, I should have been jumping out of my skin. And they would get downtrodden because I wasn't reacting like normal. And when they got a little older, I said, "Guys, think about what it is that I do and the things that I see. And do you really think you're going to scare me like that? Really? Come on, I've seen some horrible stuff over here that scared the hell out of me. So you coming up and going boo." But I found that I've gotten a little bit older. Shelley has come around, and she'll get me every now and again. And it just makes you want to jump out of your skin. I'm like, damn it. We're going to take a break real quick, so we will be back in just a few minutes. in irony, we turn around and we always chat during the interlude. And we were talking about this last week. We did a seance. And some of the people that were watching were turning around and they were going, well, we didn't see anything fly around the room. And we didn't see any of this happen. And we didn't. And I'm like, that's fine. That's what they were expecting.
That's Hollywood.
Sorry. Yeah, that's a lot of Hollywood. Sorry to disappoint. It does happen. But I had 3 different cameras focused on what we were trying to do. And anytime that you turn any attention device purposefully on an area, the spirit will go, oh, I don't want to be in that. And people go, I don't want my picture taken, or I don't want to be seen, or, so for a lot of people, it did not have the effect that they were looking for. Okay. But you guys both said that the table, for the people that are watching, the table that we used is a large wooden heavy table with actual tile inlay, and it's heavy. It takes 2 people to move, hands down. If we had used a lighter table, like a fold-out table, I'm going to let either Pat or Jared talk about it for a minute.
Go ahead, Jared. Tell them what's happened.
Go ahead, Pat. You say it.
The table, my friends and I, when we first started doing this, we had a round oak antique table, and that sucker would actually undulate. And sometimes it would vibrate. And sometimes you felt like your hands were going down into the table, like it was liquid. It was just absolutely fascinating. And then one I did over in Warren at a friend's house, she had gotten one of those, I'm going to call it a plastic office table. It was like 6 foot long, and it was the white. And that sucker bounced and went side to side. And she kept saying, Pat, I borrowed this table. Don't break it. And I'm like, they had a message for one of the gals there that is now living down in Florida, but she had been a spiritualist minister for many years and had a church for like 20 years. And she was not doing the work that she had always done. She was retiring, and they were not liking it. They were telling her, you can retire if you want, but you're still doing this work. And it was just crazy. Crazy. The thing would thump on the floor. It would lift up and drop down. And it's just interesting.
Oh, Thursday. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
On Thursday, you guys were saying, I was behind the computer. I was a completely different desk and table. So I was in the room and yet not directly seated at the table. But you guys said that thing was actually vibrating because you had your hands on it.
Yeah, it
does.
And
that's how I often know when different spirit have come. It vibrates harder. It vibrates heavier. It will have, there's just, again, it's one of those things you just know the vibration itself changes.
Right. I think it's important to kind of mention, too, I know, Michael, you had touched upon this and saying that's not what people were expecting, and they're expecting to see this, show that you typically think of a seance. But like if you go somewhere like Lilydale or you go to Camp Chesterfield, when you're working with a spiritual medium, they have what's called a seance room. That's where all readings are conducted from when you walk in. It's a seance. Seance means to sit. Mm-hmm. So when you're going to a medium, a lot of times, there's different types of mediums. For instance, there's mental mediums, which a lot of people are, and they're using their clairs and their psychic sense to bring spirit through to deliver messages. That's a seance in and of itself when you're communicating with spirit like that. And then you have trance mediums where the spirit actually enters into the body of the medium. The medium steps aside, in essence, has control of their body still, but usually, just like channeling is another term, where the spirit will speak through them and provide actions and movement and things like that through the medium themselves. And that's something that takes a little bit more to develop and actually work with. But also tied with that is physical mediumship and the physical phenomenon. And table tipping is one of those things that's a little bit easier because you can generate a lot of energy for the spirit to use. A lot of people will sing songs, like row, row, row your boat or something like that to draw up the energy, and spirit can use that to manipulate those things. But then there's other phenomenon like the trumpet messages. That requires somebody that's extremely trained and has the ability to develop the ectoplasm necessary to create this external voice box to hear the spirit, the disincarnate spirit, speak through the trumpet, or to manifest in front of somebody. It almost acts like a sheet, and the spirit can come up, and this ectoplasm sheets over them so you can see them. Transfiguration, apports, like when you have an object that will appear from one place from another, for the medium. So there's a lot that actually goes into it. So if you're thinking you're going to come into a seance and it's going to be this show, there's very few physical mediums out there that can generate the energy for the spirit to work off of. They say that there's a resurgence of physical mediumship coming back, and because in the very beginning there were more, but there was a lot of fraudulent stuff going on as well. But usually your top mediums are your mental mediums and your trance mediums. When we talk about channeling gets a little bit more in depth usually, and it's usually connecting with ascended masters or enlightened, higher enlightened beings that actually come through for those sessions. So it just gives you a little background.
And that's one of the reasons I have someone like Jared sitting across from me, because I have gone into trance and I have gone into that other part. And you don't know the difference between being here physically or being in that trance. I have transfigured, if you will, to look like people, to sound exactly like them. I got to have somebody I trust to say, hey, okay,
right,
stop back now.
Absolutely, because when you go in those trance states, that sometimes happens, and it depends on the people that's in the room too. If you're picking up and pulling off their energy, and somebody just came in drunk, the medium might start feeling a little drunk in that state. So it might take a little bit for her to come back and feel normal again. So it does require the energy.
I've done that too, and if you get someone who gets scared because of what they're seeing or what they're hearing or what they're feeling, that's not good for me either, because I'm not really in the physical. I'm doing my thing. And Sunday at the fair that we did, our own little fair we did in Barberton, I had an appart of a bolt. Now I use a wooden tray table. I don't need a very big a big table. And I had read, and it was the end of the day, and I looked under my table and there was a little bolt, maybe 3/4 of an inch long, that had not been there.
Wow.
It was there when I quit.
Yeah. And it's many years since you've been doing it. It's like mental mediumship is a lot of what you do, but when you sit in these seance type atmospheres with group people, and you have a collective group energy, as that you've been doing it for so long, things start to happen and change. So it is really good to have somebody with a knowledge base that can interpret what's going on to help you.
Right. And I haven't always done that, but I did. I had a lady become very frightened because the person I was bringing forward was someone very close to her that she didn't particularly want to talk to. And she starts crying and getting upset. And they had to calm her down, because I'm like going, excuse me, what? Because I still was not back in my physical
body.
Right. This thing.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm, do you do seance stuff?
Not recently. It's sometimes it happens during a reading. I had a guy, a young guy, and I start the reading with, all I see is tomato plants in paint cans. And I said, what's going on? They're everywhere. And it was his grandfather. So it was this tour de force reading. I have no memory of this, but apparently I was singing to him in a Sicilian dialect that his songs his grandfather would sing. And so he managed to get in and get through me just like that.
Yeah.
So it happens a few times. I've had an apport appear under the middle of my back in the middle of a couch cushion. And there was no way that thing was there before. Mind you, there was a lot of energy going on at the moment. So it just kind of like a lost piece of jewelry just appeared.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, Malcolm, because people think that we are totally in control when we're doing this, and we're not. Like I just said, we're doing this, talking in foreign languages, talking like we're drunk, knowing things we have no. One of the gentlemen had been a wood carver. He said since he's 5 years old, he loves wood. And they immediately took me back to 2 past lives with him. One when he had been building wooden ships, with the mermaid on the end. And the other one when he was a gondola builder in Venice. And I guess I slipped into the Italian part. And he was fast. And I didn't know I did it. I had no clue.
Yeah. Most mediums, when they go in that trance state or channels in the physical mediumship, even because you have to enter that trance state to be able to do it, they have no recollection of what just happened when they come back, and because they step back.
All of us do prayers before we start our work. I mean, You just do because not a good idea if you don't. You don't know who you're going to tap into if you don't.
At that point, you guys are just becoming nothing more than conduits to go
That's
from
right.
here to there.
Yeah.
That's all a medium is a conduit. Yep.
Yeah. I was working with a group in Maine in somebody's house, and it's going well. Everybody's happy, but I come up with this phrase: "You can't go under, around, or over it." There's something very close to that, and the guy flips out. He says, "Where did you get that?" And he's going on and on. He was a songwriter, and his songwriting partner had just recently passed. They were actually they were going to the funeral like in 2 days after their reading, and that was one of the lines that they wrote together.
Wow.
And that was one of her lines, because they would go back and forth. And you never know what's going to touch people. You just got to give what you get.
Absolutely.
I want to kind of circle back here for a minute, because there's a lady, her name is Connie, in the chat room. And she had a question. She said, "I've heard a message from a loved one that has passed, but he is the only one I have heard from. Then my question is that because of his gift or mine?" So who wants to tackle that for a second? And then I've got another question that I want to ask everybody in a minute.
Well, I would say it's hers. What do you say, Malcolm, Jared?
Malcolm?
So I didn't catch all the question. Was it because she's also a medium?
She doesn't say whether she's a medium or not, but she said that she had heard a message from a loved one, but it's the only loved one she's ever heard from, and she was questioning, was that because the loved one was gifted and sent that message across, or is it because she's gifted and she was able to receive it?
It's with her, because, the spirits are always around. And anybody that was close to you is somebody that is going to be easy to connect with emotionally. So it can go back and forth. So, she may be just slipping into a relaxed enough state where it would come through. Because that's anyway, sorry, go ahead.
That was good. For me, I have a different opinion. This is my belief, but in this case, we can't remove ourselves from our mediumship, because we have to be in connection with ourself and our soul and able to receive the messages that we receive. So if we put all the effort on the spirit world, that's kind of a cop-out in some sense, because it's a two-way interchange. So in this sense, yes, she is probably a natural medium if she hasn't worked on her abilities or not. But on the same part, yes, it's a requirement of spirit to be present to bring this through. So it's this combination of the two that come together that give you the message, because you have to be able to receive it, and they have to be see. It goes, all right, that's in a nutshell. You can go really in deep here.
I'm going to kind of say much the same, but I'm going to add it just a different way. Connie, you have the gift and ability, so it is definitely you that received. But again, because of the connection between you and the loved one that you received it from, it made it easier for that bridge to be made. You haven't received a lot from anybody else that you're aware of, but it's always coming across. But here's two things for you to remember. The first one, I would honestly tell you, is think about what you can do as the same thing as going from kindergarten to graduating high school, and then possibly going on to college after that. At the very beginning of things, you will only connect with the people that you trust or that are the strongest that have that connection with you. Okay? And that's in kindergarten. And you only have a certain scope of capability to use the alphabet and count numbers and Lord knows what. As you grow, you're exercising that ability just like any other muscle in your body. And you're going to be able to hear more, do more, see more, accept more. But the biggest of all of that, in the same way, you trust more. By the time you get to 8th grade and you're doing calculus or algebra or any heavy, mathematics, you're trusting that you already know what 2 times 4 is. You no longer question that because you learned it, you did it, you understand it, it's part of you.
Yeah.
So as you're growing across all of this, you will hear more, see more, do more, graduate. And sometimes I would say that most of the world gets stuck somewhere between 8th and 12th grade. And they never really get out of high school. And I mean that politely for so many people. But they never get out of high school. That's most of the world. You take a look at, and I mean this again in a polite sense, you take a look at the four of us on the screen. We've graduated high school. We've already gone to college. We've graduated with an 8-year degree. Simply because we work on it so much. It is so ingrained. It is so much a part of us that we don't think about it. We just do it because we know 2 times 4 equals what? We know all the algebra, the geometry. We know all the trigonometry, all the heavy stuff. You know, and we're getting ready to write a doctor's thesis on it or something.
You never stop learning either.
No. Oh, my God, no.
You can always develop more.
Here's a question for everybody. And I'm going to start with you, Pat. Tell me, out of all the clairs, which one do you think you are the strongest in?
The psychometry has to be. I've just always been that way.
So clairsentient.
So it's a mixture of clairs because you're seeing and hearing and feeling and...
That's true.
You know, it's true because it's what all of us are. Jared, what about you, sir?
Again, it's usually a mixture for me, but usually the clairsentience is the strongest, and then, you know, I get a mixture of usually clairvoyance and clairaudience, and occasionally the ones will filter in.
Malcolm?
I would say about 70-75% clairvoyant. Maybe 20% clairsentient. I have to be careful going into hospitals or rehab facilities because I'll start picking up on people's pain. And then the rest is kind of whatever few percent are left over are bits and pieces of like clairaudience and I forgot the name for clear smelling.
Clairolfactance.
Clairolfactance. I don't generally get that for me, but only in one instance. There's a spirit who had alcohol issues while he was here, and it happens when I'm driving. That the smell of if there's a danger warning, it's an intense smell of alcohol, and I know immediately. Okay, slow down, watch out, like keep your eyes open. And it's saved my butt literally on a couple of occasions.
Wow.
So thank you, Slim.
Yeah.
I guess on my side, for me, and these are things that I don't think that we can ever really turn on or turn off, that we kind of focus on them more or less. You know, it's like a volume control. I don't want to see as much as what I hear. And I don't want to feel as much as what I see. But for me, it's a lot of being empathic, picking up on people's emotions, feeling what's going on. And then because of that, it jumps right into having an understanding and being able to see what is happening. This is a really odd question because I don't ask this of a lot of people, other readers. When you're reading for someone, do any of you... I'll explain the way that it happens to me, and I'm curious if it happens for you. There are points of time, and it happens more often than not. It's like nobody ever really closes their eyes when they read. Sometimes we do to get a clearer, I don't want to see what's happening in the world, so I'll close my eyes so I can envision what I'm being shown better. But it's like, all of a sudden there's a photograph in front of you, and then all of a sudden you step into that photograph and everything in that photograph comes alive. And you're hearing it, you're seeing it, you're smelling it. It's like stepping into a movie. And it's sometimes very short in duration that you get just a snapshot, 5 seconds, 8 seconds of this movie clip. Enough to get an understanding of what people are talking about. Are they happy? Are they sad? Is this a joyous event? Is this, and oh my God, there's been an accident event. You know, does that happen to all of you as well?
I've had exactly that same thing happen to me, and that's how I liken it sometimes. If I'm doing clairvoyance, sometimes I'll just see the static picture, and that's it. Or sometimes, like you said, it's like walking into a movie. And you can go I've had the experience of going very far and interacting with people, and you go like really in depth, and then come back out again. So you have the two. I've literally had that experience. Yes.
Pat, Jared,
go ahead, Pat.
happen. And when I do my psychometry, all my readings that I do at Fear is a psychometry. But I'm so clairvoyant with it. I take the thing and I'm seeing, and I do close my eyes because I want to shut out all the stuff that's going on around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I do close my eyes because that allows me to step into that time, that space, that whatever. Yeah, it does. It happens. And sometimes you don't even, it's just, you can't stop yourself, you're just there. It's like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, I agree. It's just personal preference for the reader, for one, if they prefer having their eyes open versus eyes closed. But there is a scientific thing behind that, whether you're in a alpha brainwave, a beta brainwave, or going into a theta brainwave to receive the information. And as you develop more, you can tap into this stuff without even having to close your eyes. You just can get to those points. So yeah, a lot of times when I am first working with somebody, I'll close my eyes as my auric field merges with their auric field. And as the information starts coming through, it can be, and like I said, any of those clairs. Usually I can really tell off the bat if somebody's nervous, and I have to try to, get them to calm down because their nervous energy is blocking in some sense. But then when it starts, it comes fast. And usually I become very rapid in my talk. And, like Malcolm was saying, you give it, and then sometimes you have to come back, and then you go back in. So it comes in and out, in and out, in and out constantly.
It's just, I've never asked that of other readers. I hear it periodically. One gentleman, a well-known Chip Coffey, who does a lot of mediumship work and works with paranormal groups, had said very much the same thing, that it's like stepping into a movie and then everything becomes alive. And I've never asked that of other readers because even as we all responded, I hope everybody's hearing the fact none of us read the same, ever. And we may not get the same highway of information, if I can put it that way. Pat works with psychometry, and I know Pat is hellaciously strong in psychometry because I had the gift. She helped me develop it when I was, years ago. And Jared gets things in a very different fashion versus what Malcolm might get in a different fashion versus what I might do. There is no right or wrong way.
Absolutely.
Okay. Every medium has developed. Line us all up and watch us walk. Okay. Well, because of different stages of how old we are, we're going to walk differently, whether our hips pop or our knees creak or our, arthritis and all this. But we all have a different gait. We all don't walk the same way.
Right.
It's ironic if you think about it. To me, if people, they go to the military, they have to actually learn to step together as a unit, as a unified body. And it's the same thing. None of us ever see or do or hear the same thing. Because people ask, and I know you guys have gotten the same thing. People ask, they say, well, how do you know that? Oh, I spoke to another reader. How come they don't see the same thing? Well, let's look at it this way. Put each of us on a different corner of a very busy intersection. And then there's an accident. None of the four of us are going to see that accident in the same way.
No.
Not ever. And me, because of the way that I am, I might have been looking at a building and didn't even know the damn accident happened until I heard the smash of metal.
Right.
So I catch something after the fact. I didn't see the whole thing.
The best way I've heard it described is we all have different personalities. That's why there's such a large mix of, mediums and readers, psychics, whatever you want to call us. And on the other side, especially if you're a medium connecting with, the other side, there's different personalities on the other side, and they're going to gravitate towards certain people whose energy resonates with them more. And just like with your clients that you're sitting in front of, my energy might not be meshing with yours, but if I send them over to Pat or Malcolm, they are connecting better with them. So it can be difficult, that's for sure.
And I tell people, we have an older couple that comes. I mean, they'll drive 2-3 hours to a psychic fair to see us. They're from down around Route 70 and 77. And I'll be in Cleveland and they'll show up at a fair. And it's Wilma and Robert, and we love them. But they will go to every psychic at the fair. And sometimes we all tell them the same thing. And sometimes we all touch on entirely different subjects. I may have answered something that's really bugging her when she sat with me. So when she gets to Michael, that's off the plate now. She's got a new question, and Michael handles something else. But we often all connect in some way to some little thing that we're telling them. And that's what I tell them. It depends on, the mood you're in, what's happening to you. If I answered that question, then that one's out of the way and you're going on to the next thing. So you just never know.
We have no control over it.
We can only tell you what we sees and what we get.
Mm-hmm.
I had read, this happened at a conference that I go to every year. And a year back, I read for the husband, and the entire reading was his wife. He didn't say anything much. It was all about her, the whole thing. And he didn't complain or argue or anything. But this year, when he came, he brought her with him. And because he figured, well, it would be the same thing over again. And stuff like that happens. People get messages for others. I guess you guys know about Hoyt and sitting with the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was kind of disappointed. I got like 4 or 5 little literally thumbprint size images. I didn't know any of them. So I kind of went, oh, well. And I got home. I showed them to my mom, and she knew every single one of them. They were all part of like this generation that went way back, So you never know. Sometimes the message goes through in unusual ways.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you get a message that makes absolutely no sense to you now, and in 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, you go, oh, yeah, I knew that. I heard that, whatever,
We all have a different database in our minds, too, from life experiences that we go through. And sometimes, the references I might receive might not be the same ones Malcolm gets because Malcolm has more life experience than I have. So that plays into it, too.
I use the Dane cards, and I'll make a reference to Ricky Nelson or Mae West or someone else, and they look at me and go, who? And I go, oh my God. They're in their 20s and they never heard of Ricky Nelson or Mae West or some of these other people. I go, okay, never mind.
But for you, that connects with you. I wouldn't I might not have a clue of Mae West's personality or what she did, so I can't use that. But that's what's needed to deliver that message.
Mm-hmm.
I occasionally get the images like that, like, oh, she looks just like Granny Clampett. And, it does happen. You get these movie or TV personalities, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
They have no clue.
No. I found myself when I start to get images like that to try to tell somebody, hey, the person that you're going to meet or the one you need to talk to is going to look like this. I find myself going, okay, how old are you if I'm working on the phone with them? And they'll say, well, I'm 27. Well, then you have no effing idea who I'm going to say, Spirit, show me somebody that they might know. Because I told one person, look like Charlie Chaplin. And the girl went, who? I went, oh my God. Really? Okay. Yeah. But it's all context. It's in the context of how old are they? What are their lifestyles? What do they do? What are their everything?
I don't work this way, but in a development circle that I've sat in before, because everybody has different perspectives. I've even heard of it that different astrological signs, and I'm not one for astrology because I just don't want to delve into it, but I respect it, put it that way. But anyways, everybody has a different astrological sign, so they receive information in different ways. And, for one astrological sign, you can describe it this way, but another person of another astrological sign won't take it the same way because you have to deliver it from their perspective. Are you an Aries, or are you an air sign? Are you a water sign? What are you?
It gets interesting, I know, when we read, especially in public. And like Pat had said, we turn around and we'll read for a person, and you will watch that person migrate and go to 3, 4, 5 other readers. Or they've been to 3, 4, 5 other readers before they sit at your table.
Yeah.
And people ask, well, they didn't say that the same way. We covered that. But I find myself when I'm in public and people are sitting and you talk with them and they look confused or they've got this blank like, okay, that was said by, yes. And this applies to everybody, there's people in the chat room, people that's going to listen on the podcast. If you read with multiple readers, there's nothing wrong with that. However, take each reader as their own individual person delivering a message to you.
Yes.
Okay. And then at the end of the day or the end of your questioning session with multiple people, if you have a hard time trying to find the right answer in all of it, take an aggregate approach, meaning you take the best reading and you throw it out, and you take the worst reading and you throw that out. What was left in the middle? What was the main narrative of what you heard? Because it will be very similar across all the people there. We're all telling you the same thing.
Yeah. Just drop your expectations when you walk in the room. Just be prepared and ready to receive.
Yeah.
Just be open.
I have a question for you guys. Do you find that when you read for someone and they want to be there, they really do, they're not really challenging you, but the closer you get, I like it. If y'all remember Ruth Buzzy sitting in that big rocking chair? I can just see them going away from me as far as they can go. I'll hit something, they start coming back. I hit something else, and they go, oh, no, I didn't want her to know about it. And it's like you're just watching them go back like they're on a seesaw going up and down.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people really get quite upset when you start getting a little too close to some material that's maybe difficult for them, they don't want to know about or whatever. I've seen them sort of recoil. And, there's... Or the guys that come for readings, and I don't know if I can do it on the camera, but they sit there with their arms crossed and go, prove it to me.
Covering their plexus, their emotions.
Yeah, they're cutting it off.
Yeah.
But sometimes it happens that somebody comes in and does that, and spirit just gives me something that gets them right between the eyes. You know, it's okay, I'll prove it to you. Yeah. And bang.
Yeah.
But it's not under my control to do that, you know.
Right. And if I find they can't connect, I will take, we have a 3-minute rule. If we're not connecting in 3 minutes, I will take you back to the desk and say, I am, and Jared knows I did it not the time, but the time. I just can't connect. They either want to challenge me or, again, like Malcolm said, I'm touching on things they really don't want me to touch on. And I'm not going to waste your time, my time and your money, not really in that way, but just say, this has nothing to do with you. It is me. My connection to whatever you need is not connecting today. So I would rather take you and find you someone who can really connect with you and help you. And
that's a great topic for another show for discussing what you should, when you're going to a reading, how to prepare yourself.
If you will.
Yeah, absolutely. We could go on for hours about this stuff.
Yeah, there's no doubt. All right, folks, we've actually extended past our hour. But this evening we were talking about the major clairs, or how we get information that comes across from the other side into our physical form for us to relate to other people. And again, we'll probably hit this same topic probably another month and a half or two, because there's more that we should be talking about or could. Mm-hmm. But for this evening, this is a broadcast kind of conversation of what can happen, where the information comes from. So if you find yourself that you're at a point where you're stronger having an emotion come to you, or that you hear something easier, or you see something easier, or again, if you know it, not everybody has the same gifts and talents as somebody else, and you may have better capability with one clair than another. It's perfectly fine. It's just when you find it, work with it. Mm-hmm.
We've been trying to do a show on empaths too. How people are not aware that they have anything. Will walk into a room and like, oh, I didn't have this headache before I got here. What the heck's going on? And then you find out somebody says, I've had this migraine for 3 days. And it just, that would be so cool. Because again, my friend Kathy's going through that, and I keep saying to her, she's getting these pains, and I say, go into it. Is this mine, or does this belong to me?
Right.
She'll go, no. And I said, then why are you holding on to it?
What I suggest to people in that situation is saying, thank you for showing me, please leave.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because I found most empaths are also very good healers. And if they start picking up the body pain of other people, it's a tool to say, go there, left knee, or, whatever the case is, right?
Absolutely.
I'll say, thank you for allowing me to take this pain from them, but I send it into the earth to be transmuted. It is not mine.
I'm getting all goosebumps on that one. Yeah, you don't have to accept it. But Pat, you're talking about being like Ms. Psychometry. I phone you up sometimes just to chat, and you just launch into a reading like you're already in the middle of it. No, oh, you're here. Okay, well, I got all this information for you.
You don't do that to me, Pat. I've been thinking about you for days. What the is going on? Those two guys. So that's kind of a double-edged sword there, friend.
That's true too.
Well, Michael.
Pat and I get on the phone, and it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And I'll be cruising along thinking at about 35 miles an hour, here comes Pat out of left field at 110. What do you think about that? And I'm like, oh, good God. Busted.
But we all do that. That's just what we do.
Busted.
You can't stop it. We just, somebody comes.
No, it does. It comes across. And thankfully, I think all of us, as we go along, have learned to develop at least some mild filter so that we don't always say exactly what we're seeing or hearing.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you have to. You can't.
It would either embarrass us or it would embarrass who we're talking about or something.
We would scare him to death.
Sometimes you got to go to the back door and not let him in the front door. Because if you let him in the front door, oh.
But we're definitely going to have to do another show about when people go to get a reading and just what they might experience and talk about our experiences reading on one-on-one. We may just do that. At any rate, for this evening, thank you all for being here. Thank you from the chat room, for everybody that's joined from the chat room and for the people that are going to listen on the podcast side. For everybody, if you want, you can check us out. We have previous videos and things and shows on Terra Turas. You can also check us out on our website at www.terraturas.com and also on YouTube, where we have and do a live show at Terra Turas. Until next week, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll get you again next week.
Bye now.
Good night.
Good night.